Princess Hana never thought she would die in space. She always imagined passing away peacefully in her palace on Valoria Prime, surrounded by family and honor guards. But right now, watching bright green plasma bolts tear through her convoy ships, death seemed very real and very close. The mission had started so well. 3 days ago, she left the safety of the inner worlds to visit the mining colonies on the rim. Her father, Emperor Taman, wanted to show the outer settlements that the royal family cared about them. It was supposed to be simple: visit a few mining stations, give some speeches, and return home with good publicity. Nobody expected the Krex raiders. The ugly, gray-skinned pirates came out of nowhere, hiding behind a cluster of floating rocks, called an asteroid field. Their black ships moved like hunting wolves, surrounding Hana's small diplomatic fleet before anyone could react. The princess pressed her face against the window of her transport ship, watching her escort vessels explode one by one. Captain Jiwan was the first of her personal guards to fall. Hana had known him since childhood. He taught her how to fence, and always brought her sweet cakes on her birthday. Now he lay on the metal floor of their ship, his advanced energy rifle still clutched in his dead hands. Blue blood pooled around his body, and his eyes stared at nothing. "Your Highness, we need to move now." Lieutenant Minho grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away from the window. His young face was pale with fear, but his voice stayed steady. Minho was only 2 years older than Hana's 23 years, yet he commanded respect from soldiers twice his age. Explosions rocked their ship, making everyone stumble. The lights flickered and the air filled with smoke. Through the chaos, Hana could hear the heavy footsteps of Krex warriors boarding their vessel. The pirates were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty. They would either kill her or sell her back to her father for an enormous ransom. "The escape pods are this way," Minho shouted, pointing down a narrow corridor. But even as he spoke, they could all see the problem. Krex raiders in their thick black armor were already blocking that path, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. Hana's hand moved to the ceremonial sword at her side. The blade was beautiful, covered in precious gems and ancient Valorian writing, but it was made for ceremonies, not real fighting. Against the Krex armor and energy weapons, it would be as useful as a butter knife. Her 2 remaining bodyguards, Sun Ho and Kyung, stepped in front of her with their plasma rifles ready. Both men had served the royal family for over 10 years. Sun Ho was quiet and thoughtful, always 3 steps ahead of any threat. Kyung was louder and more aggressive, but equally loyal. They were good soldiers, but there were too many enemies. "We'll hold them off as long as we can, Princess," Sun Ho said quietly. His scarred hands gripped his weapon with practiced ease. "Maybe you can find another way out." But they all knew the truth. There was nowhere to run. The Krex had surrounded the ship completely, and more of their warriors poured through the breach in the hull every second. The pirates moved with the confidence of predators who had cornered their prey. Hana closed her eyes and thought of her homeworld. She pictured the purple mountains around the capital city, the way the twin suns made everything glow golden at sunset. She thought of her younger brother Jinwoo, who would have to take the throne if she died here. He was smart and kind, but still just 18 years old. The Krex were getting closer now. She could smell their strange metallic scent and hear their harsh voices as they communicated in their guttural language. They spoke of credits and ransom money, treating her like cargo to be sold. Just when all hope seemed lost, something impossible happened. The sensors on their damaged ship picked up a new contact, another vessel dropping out of hyperspace right into the middle of the battle. But this wasn't a Valorian rescue ship, or even a Krex reinforcement. It was an old, beat-up human freighter that looked like it should have been scrapped decades ago. The ship was so ancient it was still broadcasting military identification codes from old Earth, codes that most of the galaxy had forgotten existed. The Krex stopped their advance, confused by this unexpected arrival. Through the static-filled communication system, they could hear the human ship's message repeating in multiple languages. "This is Terran vessel requesting immediate assistance for any ships in distress." Hana stared at the tactical display in amazement. One small human ship against an entire Krex raiding fleet. It seemed like suicide. The airlock of the human freighter opened with a loud hiss, and out stepped the most unlikely hero Princess Hana had ever seen. Sergeant Wu Jin looked nothing like the polished warriors of her royal guard, or even the brutal Krex raiders. He was average height for a human, maybe in his 30s, with short black hair and tired eyes that had seen too much combat. His military uniform was faded and patched in several places, like he had been wearing it for years without replacement. What really caught everyone's attention were his weapons. While the Valorians carried sleek energy rifles that hummed with power, and the Krex wielded plasma cannons that could melt through steel, Wu Jin held what looked like ancient projectile weapons. His main rifle was a simple design that fired metal bullets instead of energy beams. Strapped to his belt were several round objects that the Valorians recognized as primitive explosive grenades. The Krex raiders saw him and started laughing. Their harsh voices echoed through the damaged ship as they pointed at his basic equipment. To them, this human looked like a museum piece, someone carrying weapons that most civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. One of the larger Krex warriors even lowered his plasma rifle, thinking this would be too easy. That was their first mistake. Wu Jin moved with the smooth confidence of someone who had survived countless battles. Without warning, he pulled the pin from one of his grenades and threw it directly into the center of the Krex formation. The explosion was devastating. Unlike energy weapons that could be deflected by shields or armor, the shrapnel from his grenade tore through everything in its path. "Stay low, Princess," Wu Jin called out in Valorian, though his accent was thick and his grammar imperfect. He had learned the language from military training files, not from elegant court tutors. As he spoke, his assault rifle barked repeatedly, each shot taking down another Krex raider with mechanical precision. Princess Hana crouched behind a damaged control console, watching in amazement. The human's bullets seemed to find their targets effortlessly. While her own guards had struggled to hit anything with their advanced plasma weapons, she had always been told that Valorian technology was superior to everything else in the galaxy, especially the crude tools used by humans. Do Hyun, the ship's chief engineer, crawled over to where she was hiding. His orange maintenance uniform was torn and covered in dust from the explosions. "Princess, how is he doing this with such basic equipment?" he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. The answer became clear as they watched Wu Jin fight. Where the Valorian guards had stood in formation and tried to outshoot the Krex with superior firepower, the human used completely different tactics. He never stayed in one place for more than a few seconds, always moving, always using the damaged ship's structure as cover. When a group of Krex tried to surround him, Wu Jin disappeared behind a pile of debris, only to pop up 20 feet away and attack from an unexpected angle. He used broken pipes to block their line of sight, then rolled under damaged equipment to get behind them. His movements were unpredictable and chaotic, nothing like the orderly battle formations that Valorian military academies taught. The Krex, who were used to fighting enemies that relied on technology and shields, found themselves completely outmatched by someone who fought with pure cunning and experience. Their heavy armor, designed to deflect energy weapons, provided little protection against bullets that punched right through the weak points between plates. Wu Jin seemed to know exactly where to aim. A shot to the neck joint of one raider sent him crashing to the ground. A grenade rolled under the feet of 3 others, ending their threat permanently. Each move was calculated and efficient, with no wasted motion or ammunition. Lieutenant Minho, still clutching his plasma rifle, stared in disbelief. "He's fighting like an animal," he said, but there was respect in his voice rather than disgust. In Valorian culture, warriors were expected to be honorable and follow strict codes of conduct. This human fought like his life depended on it, using every trick and advantage he could find. Princess Hana found herself studying Wu Jin's every move. When he ran out of ammunition in his rifle, he smoothly switched to a sidearm without missing a beat. When that was empty, he grabbed a fallen Krex weapon and used it against its former owners. Nothing was beneath him if it meant survival and victory. The most impressive thing was his awareness of the battlefield. Even while fighting for his life, Wu Jin kept track of where the Valorians were positioned, making sure his grenades and gunfire never endangered the people he was trying to save. He moved the battle away from Princess Hana's location, drawing the Kreks toward the damaged sections of the ship where he had more room to maneuver. Within minutes, the corridor that had been full of Kreks raiders was quiet, except for the sound of sparking electronics and Wu Jin's heavy breathing. The human stood among the bodies of his enemies, his simple weapons having accomplished what the Valorians' advanced technology could not. Just when Princess Hana thought they might actually survive, the situation got much worse. Through the cracked viewports of their damaged ship, she could see 3 more Kreks vessels dropping out of hyperspace. These weren't the small raider ships they had been fighting. These were full-sized warships, each one carrying dozens of heavily armed pirates. The first wave of new Kreks fighters poured through the breached hull like angry insects. Princess Hana counted at least 30 of them, all wearing the thick black armor that made them look like walking tanks. Their red eyes glowed in the smoky darkness, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Wu Jin took one look at the incoming horde and checked his ammunition. His face remained calm, but Hana could see him counting bullets and grenades with the quick efficiency of someone who had been in this situation before. The news wasn't good. He was running dangerously low on everything. This is going to get interesting, Wu Jin muttered in his own language, then switched back to his broken Valorian. Princess, you see that pile of metal over there? When I give signal, you run fast to there. But instead of just giving her orders, he did something that completely shocked her. He pulled out his backup pistol, a smaller version of his main weapon, and tossed it to her handle first. The trust in that simple gesture hit her like a physical blow. This human, who barely knew her name, was giving her one of his few remaining weapons while facing impossible odds. Princess Hana caught the pistol, feeling its unfamiliar weight in her hands. Valorian weapons were lightweight and powered by energy cells, but this human gun was heavy and solid, made of actual metal and mechanical parts. She had never held anything like it before. You know how to use? Wu Jin asked, already turning back to face the approaching enemies. I'll figure it out, she replied, surprising herself with the determination in her voice. From behind a twisted piece of hull plating, Guard Taehyun crawled toward them. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, and his left arm hung useless at his side, but his eyes were alert and focused. He had been guarding the royal family for 8 years, and in all that time, he had never seen anything like what this human was doing. I've never seen anyone fight like this human, Taehyun whispered to Princess Hana as another explosion rocked their position. Our military training teaches us to use superior technology and firepower to win battles. But he's using the environment itself as a weapon. Taehyun was right. As they watched, Wu Jin grabbed a long piece of broken metal pipe and wedged it between 2 support beams. When a group of Kreks tried to rush his position, he kicked the pipe loose, sending a cascade of debris crashing down on them. The makeshift trap crushed 2 raiders and blocked the path for several others. When his rifle finally ran empty, Wu Jin didn't panic or retreat. Instead, he picked up rocks and chunks of metal, throwing them with deadly accuracy. A piece of twisted steel caught one Kreks in the face, stunning him long enough for Wu Jin to close the distance and take his weapon. Within seconds, the human was using a Kreks plasma rifle against its former owners. How does he know how to use their weapons? Princess Hana asked, watching Wu Jin handle the alien rifle like he had been trained on it. Humans are adaptable, Taehyun replied, wincing as he tried to move his injured arm. My grandfather fought against them in the border wars 50 years ago. He always said they were the most dangerous enemy because they learned fast and never gave up. The battle became a deadly game of survival. Wu Jin moved constantly, never staying in one position long enough for the Kreks to coordinate an attack. Against him, he used every piece of debris, every shadow, every damaged section of the ship to his advantage. When the enemies expected him to retreat, he attacked. When they tried to surround him, he disappeared through holes in the hull that seemed too small for a person to fit through. His primitive explosives continued to prove devastatingly effective. The Kreks' armor that easily deflected energy weapons offered little protection against flying metal fragments. Each grenade Wu Jin threw seemed to do more damage than the Valorians' plasma cannons had managed in the entire first part of the battle. Princess Hana found herself completely caught up in following Wu Jin's tactical calls. When he shouted, "Move left," She moved left without thinking. When he called cover fire, she squeezed the trigger of his pistol, sending bullets toward the enemies even though she had never fired such a weapon before. All her royal protocols and formal training disappeared in the face of his unwavering competence. This wasn't the elegant warfare she had studied in palace military classes. This was raw, desperate survival, and somehow this human was not just surviving but actually winning against overwhelming odds. The most amazing thing was how he kept track of everyone while fighting. Even in the chaos of battle, Wu Jin made sure his attacks drew enemies away from the wounded Valorians. He positioned himself between the Kreks and the civilians, taking the most dangerous positions for himself, while keeping the others as safe as possible. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the damaged ship as the final wave of Krek's warriors approached. Princess Hana could see at least 20 more of them moving through the corridors, their armor clanking with each step. These were the elite fighters, bigger and more dangerous than the ones they had already faced. Their weapons glowed brighter, and their movements showed the confidence of soldiers who had never lost a battle. Wu Jin crouched behind a pile of twisted metal, blood running down his arm from a plasma burn. His breathing was heavy, and sweat mixed with dirt on his face. Most of his ammunition was gone, and several of his grenades had been used up in the previous fights. Any reasonable person would have looked for an escape route by now. But Wu Jin wasn't running. Princess Hana crawled closer to him, clutching the pistol he had given her. The weapon felt heavier now that she understood how dangerous their situation had become. She had been raised to believe that royalty deserved protection, that people should risk their lives for the crown. But watching this human fight made her question everything she had been taught. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't even know me. You could have flown away when you saw the Krek ships. Why are you risking your life for complete strangers?" Wu Jin looked at her with those tired eyes that had seen too much war. His answer was so simple that it hit her like a physical blow. "Someone needs help. I can help, that's enough." Princess Hana stared at him, trying to understand. In her world of galactic politics, every action had a dozen hidden motives. Treaties were signed for economic advantage. Alliances were formed for military protection. Wars were fought for territory and resources. Nothing was ever done simply because it was the right thing to do. But this human operated by a completely different set of rules. He wasn't fighting for money. He had refused her offer of payment. He wasn't fighting for glory. No one would even know his name after today. He wasn't fighting for his government. Earth was thousands of light years away. He was fighting simply because people needed help, and he was able to provide it. That moral code, so foreign to everything Princess Hana knew about galactic civilization, drove Wu Jin to acts of courage that seemed impossible. As the Krek's elite fighters closed in, he took wounds that would have killed most species. A plasma bolt burned through his shoulder, making him grunt with pain, but he kept fighting. Another shot grazed his leg, causing him to stumble, but he used the stumble to roll into better cover. The human's resolve never wavered. Each time he got hurt, he seemed to become more determined rather than weaker. Princess Hana watched him fight through injuries that would have sent her own guards to the medical bay, and she began to understand something important about the human species. In the corner of the damaged bridge, Communications Officer Jihoon had managed to get their emergency transmitter working. His hands shook as he tried to send a message back to Valorian Command, but his voice was steady and clear. "Valorian Command, this is the diplomatic vessel Starlight. You need to see this. One human soldier is doing what our entire battalion could not accomplish. Request immediate backup and full military honors for Sergeant Wu Jin of Earth." The response from command was filled with static, but they could make out the confusion in the controller's voice. "Repeat your last transmission." "Starlight, did you say one human?" "Confirmed, Command. One human against a full Krek's raiding fleet. He's not just holding them off, he's winning." As the battle raged on, Princess Hana noticed something that made her heart sink. Wu Jin had a clear path to his ship. The old freighter was still intact, and he could probably reach it if he abandoned his position. But every time the opportunity presented itself, he chose to stay and keep fighting instead of saving himself. He was sacrificing his own escape route to ensure her safety. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just about courage or military skill. Wu Jin had made a choice, a conscious decision that her life and the lives of her people were more important than his own survival. In a galaxy where most species looked out for themselves first, this human was willing to die for strangers. Lieutenant Minho, still clutching his plasma rifle despite his wounds, crawled over to where Princess Hana was watching the battle. "Your Highness, I'm starting to understand why the old veterans always spoke about humans with such respect. It's not their weapons that make them dangerous." "Then what is it?" she asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "It's their absolute refusal to abandon anyone they choose to protect. Once a human decides you're worth saving, they'll die before they let you down. That kind of loyalty, it's terrifying and inspiring at the same time." Princess Hana nodded, finally understanding what made humans truly dangerous in the eyes of the galaxy. It wasn't their primitive weapons or their outdated technology. It was their unbreakable moral compass and their willingness to sacrifice everything for others, even when those others were complete strangers from different worlds. Watching Wu Jin fight, she realized that her people had been measuring human strength all wrong. They had looked at technology and firepower, but they had missed the most important factor of all, the human heart and its capacity for selfless courage. The silence that followed the last explosion was almost more shocking than the battle itself. Princess Hana stood in the wreckage of what had been a Krex massacre, looking around at the bodies of pirates scattered throughout the damaged ship. Smoke drifted through the air, and sparks flew from broken electrical systems, but the fighting was finally over. When the Valorian rescue fleet arrived 3 hours later, they found a scene that none of them could have imagined. Admiral Seung, a veteran commander with 40 years of military experience, stepped through the airlock expecting to find either hostages or corpses. Instead, he discovered Princess Hana alive and unharmed, standing next to a badly wounded human who was trying to fix a broken communications panel despite barely being able to stand. "Admiral, thank the ancestors you're here," Princess Hana said, rushing to greet the rescue team. Behind her, Wu Jin swayed on his feet, his uniform torn and soaked with blood from multiple wounds. Plasma burns covered his arms and chest, and a deep cut on his forehead had left dried blood across half his face. Admiral Seung looked around the battlefield with professional amazement. His trained eye could read the story of the fight in the scattered weapons, the blast patterns on the walls, and the positions of the fallen enemies. What he saw made no sense according to everything he knew about military tactics and warfare. "Princess, our sensors detected at least 50 Krex raiders on this ship. Where are your reinforcements? How many ships came to help?" "No reinforcements, Admiral. Just him." Princess Hana pointed to Wu Jin, who was now sitting on a piece of debris because his legs could no longer support him. One human soldier defeated the entire Krex force. The Admiral stared at Wu Jin with the expression of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. "One human did all this?" Lieutenant Minho, his arm in a makeshift bandage, limped over to confirm the story. "Sir, I witnessed the entire battle. Sergeant Wu Jin single-handedly eliminated over 50 Krex raiders using only basic kinetic weapons and tactical explosives. His fighting methods were unlike anything I learned in military academy." Engineer Do-hyun nodded in agreement, still amazed by what he had seen. "Admiral, their weapons were centuries behind our technology, but somehow they were more effective than our plasma rifles. The human used tactics that seemed impossible, but they worked." Communications Officer Ji-hoon had managed to record parts of the battle on his emergency transmitter. "Sir, I have audio logs of the entire engagement. Command needs to hear this. The strategic implications are enormous." Admiral Sung approached Wu Jin, who was trying unsuccessfully to refuse medical attention from the rescue team's medics. Even barely conscious from blood loss and exhaustion, the human kept insisting he was fine and asking if everyone else was safe. Princess Hana pulled out a small fortune in Valorian credits, the standard reward for saving royal family members. "Sergeant Wu Jin, please accept this payment for your service. It's the least we can do." Wu Jin looked at the money with tired eyes and shook his head slowly. "Keep it, Princess, just doing my job." The simplicity of his response left everyone speechless. In galactic civilization, mercenaries and soldiers always expected payment for their services. Wars were fought for profit, and heroism came with a price tag. But this human had risked everything and asked for nothing in return. "Your job?" Admiral Seung asked. "Who hired you to protect our princess?" "Nobody hired me," Wu Jin replied, wincing, as the medics treated his wounds. "Saw people in trouble, had to help. That's what soldiers do." The journey back to Valoria Prime gave Princess Hana time to think about everything she had witnessed. For days she replayed the battle in her mind, trying to understand how one human with primitive weapons had accomplished what her technologically superior guards could not. The answer wasn't in his equipment or his training. It was in his character. When they reached the capital, Princess Hana requested an immediate audience with the Valorian High Council. The ancient chamber, carved from a single massive crystal, had witnessed thousands of years of political decisions. But none of those decisions would be as important as what Princess Hana was about to propose. The assembled nobles listened in, stunned silence as she told the story of the battle. Her testimony was supported by detailed reports from Minho, Do-hyun, and Ji-hoon, along with the audio recordings that captured Wu Jin's incredible tactical abilities. "Honored Council," Princess Hana said, addressing the most powerful leaders in the Valorian Empire, "we have been making a terrible mistake about humanity. We've treated them as a primitive species because their technology seems basic compared to ours, but we've been measuring the wrong things." Elder Changmin, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward in his crystal throne. "Princess, what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we establish humanity as our equals, not our inferiors. They possess something that our advanced technology cannot replicate: unbreakable moral courage. When a human decides to protect someone, they will die before they abandon that responsibility. That kind of strength is exactly what our empire needs." The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Princess Hana's proposal eventually passed, by a narrow margin. The Valorian Empire would establish its first formal military exchange program with Earth, treating humans as equal partners rather than primitive allies. 6 months later, Sergeant Wu Jin became the first human to receive the Valorian Medal of Honor, though he tried to refuse that award too. The ceremony marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics, one where humanity's greatest strength, their unwavering moral compass, was finally recognized and respected. Princess Hana often thought about Wu Jin's simple words. "Someone needs help. I can help. That's enough." In a galaxy obsessed with complex politics and hidden motives, sometimes the most powerful force was the simplest one of all: the human refusal to abandon those who needed protection.